And we are back. McCown and Shannon with you, along with our friend Doug Smith of the Toronto Star. Covers, of course, the Toronto Raptors. And it's game night tomorrow night. Hey, I guess it's a big one. It's a playoff game of
Yeah,
sorts. So any kind of battle like that is of special interest. And the Chicago Bulls this time. I think, given that it's a home game, you make the Raptors a small favorite in this, don't you?
I would think so. I think I saw lines of their 5 point favorites with most books, so that's about right. Home teams get, they generally get a 3 or 4 point boost just for being at home, and they're two very equal teams.
Was going to say the reality of the disappointment of the Raptors season could only be mirrored by the disappointment of the Chicago Bulls season, right, Doug?
Yeah, they thought they'd be a lot better. Losing Ball for the season was a crushing blow because DeRozan, Levine, Vucevic, Caruso, it's a pretty good squad. And yeah, I would say as much as the Raptors have underachieved, I think the Bulls would be thinking the same thing about themselves.
To Toronto fans, obviously the matchup with DeRozan is a key and is going to be something people will look at a lot. It's been 5 years now since DeRozan left the Toronto Raptors. They, of course, won a championship. Do you think DeMar has any special kind of animosity to the Raptors organization?
I think that's kind of gone now. At the start, there was he had no time for Masai Ujiri for the first 18 months or 2 years. But he loves the people, he loves the city, he loves the people in the organization, and I think any kind of bitterness is gone. He likes to beat them, and he relishes the chance to play against them, but there's no extra juice there, I don't think, anymore.
How do you think the basketball team is playing the Raptors? Where do you put their play at this point?
Um, they're playing as good as they can, I think. I just don't think, for some reason, this group just doesn't seem to work. And I don't know why, and I don't think there's any one reason why. But, they played very well since January and times. And then they played 2 games like they played in Boston the end of last week, and they just didn't compete well enough. So it's an odd team. And because of that, you don't know what you're going to get night to night. Like, they could come out and they could run the table Wednesday, Friday, and be in the playoffs and give Milwaukee a run. I don't think they can beat them. Or they could bomb out tomorrow night and the season's over by Thursday morning.
One of the other stories that's come up over the last little while is the future of the head coach, Nick Nurse. Do you think he's likely to go to, I don't know whether it's Houston, but do you think it's likely he will leave?
I do, and I don't know. Now, I don't have that from any kind of inside knowledge, but I think, Bob and John, you guys know, it's almost time. He's been here 10 years, head coach for 5, and at some point, it's just time to move on. And it's nobody's fault. And there's just like a burnout. There's a tiredness. There's not a whole lot of challenge, and maybe they just need a different voice. I don't know. I would say it's probably 70-30 that he goes, whether it's Houston or whether he takes a year off or whether some other team pops up. But I think there's a better than average chance that he's not going to be with the Raptors at training camp.
Hey, Doug, did his Friday night pronouncement in Philadelphia catch the organization off guard?
Oh yeah, they really did. Like they didn't see that coming at all. And to Nick's credit, he gave an honest answer to an honest question. And I will never criticize an athlete or coach for doing that. But I think the organization, and you guys know, Masai Ujiri does not like drama, and that was drama. Yeah. And I think it totally caught Bobby Webster, Masai Ujiri, the players. It caught everybody by surprise that Friday night in Philly.
Well, let's talk about the reasons why the head coach may be thinking at least about leaving. Do we assume that something has gone wrong with his relationship with Masai?
I don't think so. I just think maybe it's just run its course.
Yeah.
And maybe there are different challenges out there for everybody. That said, he's got a year left in his contract, and the Raptors could play hardball and keep him to it. But I don't think that's to the benefit of anybody. The sense I get is that everybody is just, at this point in this year right now, tired. And maybe if they take 2 or 3 weeks off and sit back and take a look at where they really are and where the franchise really is, they'll think that maybe it's best to run it back again. Or maybe they'll say, okay, you know what? We had a great run. They've had a decade of great run. They've had 5 years of tremendous run since Nick became the head coach. except for the Tampa year, which we will not talk about in polite company.
Does it exist anymore?
What's that?
The Tampa year. Does it
No,
exist?
I sort of blocked it out. I never got to Tampa, so it never happened for me anyway. But, you look at what the Raptors have done, they've been really, really good. They won a lot of games, a lot of playoff games, a championship. They've had a lot of fun, brought a lot of joy to a lot of people in the city. And at some point, it just ends.
Do you get a sense, though, when you talk about tired, usually it's the players growing tired of the coach. Do you get a sense of that at all, Doug? Is there a disconnect between what Nick's trying to do and what the players are trying to do?
I don't think so. I think the players at the start, when Nick started this whole, we're going to press everything, we're going to trap and press and scramble on defense because that's how we have to score. I think they were excited by that. I think after 2 years of it, it wears on you. It's hard to do, and I think they're all like, "Oh my goodness, this again." But it is the only way they can win, and the job is to win. But I don't think the players have tuned him out at all. I do think they play hard most nights. I think this has been such a bizarre year. Guys hurt, guys in different roles. They could get no traction for the first 50 games of the year, and it just wears you down mentally. And maybe you just need a break. And like I say, maybe in 3 weeks you realize, okay, it wasn't as bad as it seemed, and let's go again. Or maybe in three weeks you decide, you know what? If we're going to do it, let's do it now, and not do it in a year or 2 years or 18 months from now.
I may be 100% wrong, but it seems to me that this comes up because Nick Nurse is frustrated, and probably frustrated with the front office that they haven't made more changes. They haven't given him the kind of team that he can win with. And, the only move that they made during the season, of course, was the Pirtle deal, and it was a pretty good deal. I think we would all agree, but it hasn't really been enough. I don't think any of us believe it's enough. I think that the sense is that the core of this team has to and will change during this offseason. Do you think that's a factor for Nick?
I don't think so, because the only other things they could have done at the trade deadline was make the team worse. And that's not what a coach wants. The only other moves at the trade deadline were to divest themselves of VanVleet, Trent, Anunoby, Siakam, one or two of those guys. And that would have meant the last 30 games would have been playing for lottery balls. And that's not what a coach wants. So I don't see that as a factor. I think, like last year when they didn't really have a center, that was probably an issue, and that's why Nick decided to play the way he did. And it worked. They won 48 games. They were pretty good last year. And this year, it didn't work. And because it didn't work early in the year when, Chua missed 7 weeks, VanVleet was out a bit, Scotty Barnes got off to a terrible start, really. Gary Trent was hurt a little bit. And it just sort of, they lurched from one bad thing to another. And when they finally got it settled after the deadline and around the 1st of February, they were pretty good. They played hard. They won some games. They were right in there. But then it catches up to you again. Nick has to take some responsibility, I think, in the way he's used his players. Like, we still don't know whether 2 or 3 guys on this team can play at the NBA level. And I think that's a bit of a coaching issue. And I think the front office realizes that too.
I think that's where you insert the name Malachi Flynn a few times.
Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, Koloko sort of lurched between starting here, playing here, and going to the G League, which he should have. But right. I think Flynn and Banton are the ones. And then I think the front office would like to know whether they're players. And I think the coach probably should have found out with a more consistent run for each of them. And he didn't. And they are where they are, 41-41. That outside of the Tampa year, 41-41 is their worst record in a decade.